This is the dream, a Talbot Matra Rancho. And this is the reality. Yes, I bought a Talbot Matra Rancho, and here it is. It's been in storage for 27 years, and in this video I'm going to tell you the sad story of how I came to own it and walk you through what needs doing to get it to join just 2 other ranchos that are road legal here in the UK, which makes this just about the rarest car I own, and that's saying something. But first, let me introduce it. This particular Rancho was registered in September 1984, so it's one of the very last before production stopped to make way for Matra to build the original Mark I Renault Espace. I've got one of those as well, and it's a very fine thing, but that's a whole other story. This is an original UK car, finished in Talbot bronze. After it had been around for roughly 12 years and 60-odd thousand miles of duty, it was parked up following an MOT failure on structural corrosion around the rear suspension mounting points. More on that story later. Thankfully, rather than being scrapped, it was put into storage, where it stayed until it was bought somewhere around 2007 by a man called Martin Vagg. Martin was a very capable car restorer who at the time was in the middle of doing a fantastic job of restoring a properly rotten Mark V Cortina estate. There's a whole thread about that with pictures telling the whole story on the Buy Sell Cortina forum, and I'll put a link to that down below in the description. I saw that Cortina some years ago, and it's an absolute credit to him. And I've seen it spotted on Twitter more recently by Axel Stand, who's well worth a follow if you're on Twitter, by the way. I'll put a link to that as well. So I know that the Cortina is still up and about and looking really well. Martin bought this Rancho as his next project, but it wasn't to be. In the autumn of 2015, before he could start work on the Rancho, Martin died suddenly. He was only 51. I never got to meet him. I bought the car from his brother about a year later, and I loaded the Rancho up with all Martin's accumulated Rancho spares and an elderly Chibora welder and a shelf full of Haynes manuals, like you do, and towed it all home from Sussex to South Wales, helped by my pal Rob, who came down as well with his white Vauxhall Senator, which was freaking me out in my mirror all the way down, thinking it was a traffic cop about to pull me over, because I'm that sort of age. What this story means to me is that I feel the weight of responsibility, if you like, to do the kind of job on this car that Martin would have done based on what I've seen that he did on the Cortina. As the custodian of rare old cars, I do sometimes feel like I'm in a relay race, if you like, carrying the baton of their continued preservation. And in this case, that feeling somehow especially acute. The car's very complete. The things that make it a Rancho are all present and correct, like this roof rack and the grille, and there's even a set of these rabbiting lamps that mount here on the scuttle and are for, well, they're for looking like you're going rabbiting, really, and generally being roughy-tufty, off-roady type. They're not driving lamps, they only work when the ignition is off, bizarrely, which will be an interesting wiring setup to get my head around. This one is, you can see that the light is loose in there. I've got a box of basically bits of those, of which I think I can make up one complete pair. They're all broken in various different ways. The seats are filthy, but they're all here, and they're all in, well, they're dirty, but they're intact. They just need a really good clean, and I think this vinyl might want some vinyl paint or something on it to restore it, but that's all doable. The fabric is in reasonably good condition, so we'll have a go at that with a steam cleaner or a wet vac or something. The only thing I know of that's missing from under the bonnet is the cap from the screen wash bottle here. This is their favourite place to rust. It's around the back of these sills, around where the subframe mounts are and where the sills end and this pickup body comes down and joins it. That's where they go, and you can see in here it's quite frilly. I mean, some of this has been cut away, presumably by Martin exploring what was going on. There's various layers that I'll need to cut away and build up gradually. It's a bit grossy around there. Let's just surface rust on the suspension. That's a liner. God knows what's hiding behind. Is that a liner? No, it's not, I don't think. That's metal. Sort of, some of it's metal. That bit doesn't look too clever. This is the rail of the pickup. I think that looks worse than it is. I think it's mostly surface corrosion. I don't know, we'll see when we get into it. But the good news is that it seems to be mainly made up of fairly flat planes and box sections, so the fabrication work shouldn't be terribly difficult, without too many complex shapes and compound curves that take so much time to get right. The other big question is, what's the best way to get the car up in the air so that I can do the repair work underneath it? Plan A is to use my CJ Autos tilter here with some extra support from some axle stands, of course, to keep safe. I'll still have to crawl around underneath and probably weld upside down a fair bit, though, if I do that. So if that doesn't give me enough room, then I'll need to buy or make a rotisserie so that I can roll the car over, a rollover jig. That would mean that the engine and gearbox would have to come out, though, which is an extra job that I'm kind of hoping to avoid. I'd like to keep it simple and hopefully it won't take that long. Haha. The good news is that these doors lock and unlock and open and close with a really solid feeling and don't fit up to the cliches that you might have about a 70s French car. The less good news is that when you actually come to look at this A-pillar in detail, it doesn't look quite so good. So I think it's structurally sound, but the outer skin here is distinctly frilly, and at the base of the A-post here, that's not good. I mean, there's multiple layers of steel built up there, so it's still got plenty of rigidity, but we can't leave that as it is. So the door's going to have to come off, the front wing's going to have to come off, and I'll build a frame here as well to go in this door aperture to make sure that everything stays square while I'm chopping around the A-post there. So much for the A-posts. What about the B-posts? Well, they're not looking too clever either around the bottom. They're okay otherwise. I'm liking that it's nice flat shapes though. The base of the windscreen here is another favourite rot spot, but it's completely sound here on this car, which is really good news. Under the scuttle here is good as well. There's a little bit of surface, well, mess, but it's still solid. The only problem is that under here there's a piece that kind of makes up a sort of triangular section, and that's completely gone, and that's going to be really tricky to get to. I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to do that yet. This rear superstructure is all fiberglass, of course. This is in pretty good condition. There's no major cracks that I've found. They can split a little bit around the tailgate hinges there. They don't seem too bad. We maybe glass in some reinforcing plate and make sure that that stays good. There are some minor bits of rot elsewhere as well. The top of the driver's door here and the corners of the door bottoms. The floor all seems good. The front wings, the bulkhead, that's all okay. There's no sign of any accident damage or anything like that either. And otherwise there's just a little bit of surface corrosion that needs cleaning up. While no doubt there will be plenty of swearing and head scratching once I get into it, most of it looks like it's made of reasonably straightforward shapes and won't have all the complexity I've been having to deal with on my Honda Accord Aero deck. That was supposed to be the nursery slopes before I got stuck into the Rancho here, but it's kind of turned into a black run, complete with avalanche risk from all the lumps of filler falling on my head. So, what's it like to drive? Well, I've got no idea. Actually, that's not quite true. I've got some idea, because it did drive out of the garage that I bought it from and onto a trailer under its own power and off the trailer and into this shed also under its own power. And I can tell you that that driving experience was about 30 yards of rattly, smoky, pure unadulterated joy. Beyond that, we'll have to wait a bit to take it on the road. I haven't fired it up for about 5 years. Question: do you want to see me try and make it run before I dismantle it any further and get stuck into the metalwork? I'm half tempted to do that, but leave me a comment down below if you'd be interested in watching a video on whether I can get it to run or not, because I'm really keen to get stuck into this now. I've joined the Matra Enthusiasts Club a little while ago, and I've been in contact with a few people who know a lot more about ranchos than I do. So with their support and the skills and tools that I've been acquiring over the last year or two, it's getting towards time to make a decent start on this and get it back on the road.